If you can just type it in the chat box, I can send it. Are you WhatsApping me your email ID? May I know your name, please? The one who's coordinating?
Ma'am, this is Veena, ma'am, and I'll send you another email ID, ma'am.
You send me another email. 1 minute. Actually,
No, ma'am, I haven't sent you the email ID. Just 1 second, ma'am. I'll send you the email ID.
okay.
Is Pavitra Akka here? Pavitra Akka, can you hear me? I just sent the PDF version
of the presentation, which you can share in read mode.
Yes,
It'll be
ma'am.
easier that way. So the format won't get messed up. So, ready when you are, if you can share the first slide. Are we ready to proceed?
Ma'am, just one minute, ma'am.
All right. Yes, we'll just wait there. And if anybody would like to introduce the session, they can go ahead, or I can just start with the presentation. Please let me know how to proceed with this.
Ma'am, we'll complete the introduction and then go for the presentation, ma'am.
Okay.
Welcome to another interesting session on nonviolent communication, once again by Ms. Sohini Jana, Head of West Bengal Council of Mediation and Dispute Resolution. Due to the request of participants and overwhelming response towards ma'am's previous session on nonviolent communication through dialogue-based approach, we are elated to have you once again, ma'am, for the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. And welcome everyone. I can see quite a host of people today. I guess relationships matter to all of us. So I'd just like to begin by asking you a very simple question. And I'd like people to please volunteer to respond. I mean, it's not just about me going on a monologue here. So one question I have for everyone is, how many of you already had some argument, something about some relationship, or witnessed some argument, or some sort of a miscommunication around you from, say, the moment you started your day till the moment that you're sitting here with me for this session? How many of you actually experienced anything like that, even if remotely? You could put your hand up if that's all right. There's a raise hand button. If you don't want to speak, you can all like raise hands so that I can see how many people have actually seen any relationship discord, any miscommunication, any argument, maybe fought with a partner or with a family member, or been irritated with something or the other? All right, I see. All right, let me see how many people have raised their hands. Is everybody really that peaceful? I can only see 2 people raise their hand. Okay. I guess people have had a very peaceful start to their day. Well, let's see. All right. So we'll begin today by exploring relationships in the context of nonviolent communication. So we'll look at how relationship works in terms of how we communicate and how it depends on how we communicate. And how does nonviolent communication feature and how can it make life easier and better for all of us? So I'd like you to move to the next slide, please, where we'll begin. Yes. So as you can see in that particular picture here, there are 2 people who are fighting. Clearly there's a rift, and their expressions tell us that there is some sort of hostility there. And this is something that's very common. We've all seen this expression in some form or the other. We've all felt this way either while fighting with another person, or we've seen this happening around us at the individual level, family level, community, society, national, and even at the global level. So this is something that's very, very common in today's world. So clearly that means that the problem persists at different levels. So the entire society in itself is hostile. And that's why perhaps today we are sitting here to contextualize this session. We're sitting here to learn about nonviolent communication, to learn about how to be gentle. And isn't it funny, because it's supposed to be something that comes to us naturally. But interestingly, we are sitting in a society which is so hostile these days in so many different ways that we have to consciously attempt to be gentle. We have to consciously attempt to tune our communication to be nonviolent. And that is the whole purpose of today's session. So I first want you to think, or rather reflect just a little bit. Take a minute or so. When was the last time when you remember someone who was being hostile or rude to you? I asked this question a little differently if you'd noticed any conflict or argument in your day. But remember the last time when someone was rude or hostile to you, can you remember how it affected you? Did you perhaps wish that they had said something differently, been gentler in their approach, or their motives or the motive to hurt you? People can share when any instance that you can remember of the last time when you perceived that someone was rude or hostile towards you. Can someone please volunteer here? I'd like somebody from the coordinating team to help facilitate some engagement, because the session will only be as engaging as you would make it to be. So I'd like you to kindly engage, and not the same set of people, because these are conversations about our everyday life and things which we face on a regular basis. So who knows, maybe we'll find a few clues on how to handle things in the Please, I invite you to volunteer and let me know, at least one person, if possible, from an entire group of 71 people. If you could let me know, when was the last time you remember someone being hostile? What did you feel? Did you feel angry, upset? You felt perhaps wronged? How did you feel? What was your immediate reaction? Anyone? Yes, Dr. Varadha Rajan. I'm so sorry if I'm
coming once again.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Actually, it is what you have asked is something, almost like kind of abstract things, because it happens any moment, ma'am. Whenever you say something, when it is not listened, children or colleagues, either you become upset, or if you have lib or able to talk very ferociously, or you just remain quiet because you are not reached. And it happens with your close, especially close friends, when they don't understand what you try to convey, and then when they don't react, even if you call or message or talk face to face. These things are quite common, ma'am, when you are not able to reach properly.
So what I understand from what you're saying, sir, is that to a great extent, how we feel about whether somebody was hostile or rude has to do with our subjective position on what they are trying to say,
Yeah,
and
quite right, quite right.
and it also is connected with the way we express ourselves. So sometimes we are misunderstood in that respect. Maybe we didn't mean to say something, unfortunately reflects that way for another person. We have hit the, we've hit the nail on the exact issue over here. So a lot of what we see in terms of hostility has to do with perception, and perception to a great extent is linked to how we communicate, how we express what we mean to say, and whether or not while we do so we are normalizing violence and thinking that it's going to have a different effect on the other person. So I'd like to go to the next slide, please. You could scroll down. Yes, no, the previous one. Yes. So first, for that purpose, let us take a look at what is violence in relationships. So we often come across a lot of things which we say that, oh, this is not violence. This is just something that happens normally within every family. And particularly, I think a lot of the violence that we face is cultural, that is culturally legitimized violence. And it is normalized to the extent that we take it as a problem if we talk about it, but we are ready to live with it, and we don't address how that should be changed. Now, the reason why I picked up this chart on family violence is because within families, if you look at the basic foundation of our relationships, it's our families, right? So within families, we see a number of different kinds of violence. And violence is not only physical. By now, we all know that. But are we able to distinguish what are the different kinds of violence, and we we get into this mode of being a part of the perpetration process, and also become a silent witness to somebody who's becoming a victim to violence. So if you look at the physical aspect, of course, it's the physical use of force which causes injury or a risk of injury. This is something that we understand and we know how we could tackle by law. And in today's civilized society, we all more or less, this is something that is a problem. Element of control. There's an element of control, there's an element of power, and there's an element of
where it completely blew his mind, and he was just like, I've never seen things in that way. I've never thought of things in that way. I am now going to behave in a different way and engage in a different way, because I just never thought, or I never imagined that by changing my mindset, by behaving or responding in a different way, things could be different. And I saw him for almost 3 days in a row, and the attitude, the personality, the way that he engaged and interacted, and then his response of how his interactions with other clients began was just, it was so transformational. But it goes back to implementing what we're learning and being that change. But I don't know if that makes sense. I'm sorry. It was long-winded, but I wanted to share that.
Thank you so much, Monica. In fact, these interactions are really valuable, and I do learn a lot from them myself. So thank you so much for contributing so powerfully. And I'm glad that you're already practicing nonviolent communication. And yes, it makes a wealth of difference, because one of the things which I see in this whole discussion and to everybody contributing is that there is an aspect of, expecting the other person within a relationship to perhaps that we can communicate so that it's easier for them to understand the person. So that is the question that we are asking here. And as Niyati also mentioned, takes charge, and there is this whole set should be raised or students should be mentored. Why should it be a monologue? Why not a dialogue? Why can't two people come and learn from each other? And why does that learning have to be conditional on just a hierarchy? The hierarchy defines the way, what kind of value is added to somebody who's growing in that field. So for somebody who has more years of experience would be able to bring a perspective that is unique to that experience. But that does not mean that those who are less experienced have anything less to contribute to the conversation, because perhaps they have the pulse of the future. Perhaps they have something that they can visualize as something that they need and they're only learning to express. And that there should be a space, I believe, meet each other halfway. And what nonviolent communication essentially does is it helps you to navigate this really complex space of relationships and the way we exist in the world, and helps you to find a way to make space for holding and in a treasured manner so that you're able to grow in them and they don't become something that limits your growth or limits the other person's growth. That is what we hear the most. So in the interest of time, we're going to move into the next slide, which will address yet another facet of this conversation. So if we can move to the next slide, please. Yes, now here we come to exactly, Monica, what you were talking about in terms of understanding that somebody's coming from a space of hurt when they're reacting and lashing. So you see, violence is the tragic expression of unmet needs. And this comes from Marshall Rosenberg himself. And this is the core of nonviolent communication, because if we are paying attention to unmet needs and we are responding appropriately, then the other person will probably not feel the need to react as aggressively as if they have to shout at the top of their voice or they have to be aggressive and violent in order to be able to, put their word across. So in dialogue, in using dialogic nonviolent communication, what is very important is not just the self-expression, but to allow the other person to come into a space of self-expression from a space of safety. It's important to understand that the other person's feelings